What is up, guys? It's me, Q here. Oh, by the way, I bought this new light here. I bought it for like $50. But makes my face too shiny. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about today is quality and quantity when you're trying to learn a language like Korean. I think when many people start out learning a language, we're too focused on learning the details, right? We're too focused on learning how to speak perfectly. So we try to like get everything down. And I know many teachers even say that, oh, if you don't get the basics of grammar down in the beginning, then you'll develop bad habits later on, and you'll never be able to fix it because you'll have to like, it's really hard to reverse it if you already fossilized the mistakes and stuff like this. But I disagree. I honestly think that in when you're learning a language, quantity is better than quality. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, like, I think it's better to say 1,000 things incorrectly and then get your point across and be understood and to communicate, rather than to just say like 10 sentences perfectly and then only know how to say those 10 things and then not know how to continue to forward. Like, it doesn't matter if you know how to say like basic introductions like, oh, hello, how are you, my name is blah blah blah. Like, you might be able to say those 10 things perfectly, but then after that, what do you say, right? It's much better to say 1,000 things incorrectly, but at least you're trying to make sentences. They may not be like grammatical, they might not be grammatically correct all the time, but at least you're communicating, or you're just throwing it out there. It's incorrect, but you're just talking, talking, talking. And that's really what you need to do in a real life situation where you meet a native. Like, say you're like studying in Korea or whatever, and then you really need to use this language. Like, you need to use the language now. Like, you don't have time to correctly conjugate the past tense. Like, you need this like right now to survive. Then of course, saying 1,000 things kind of in like a caveman speech way, that is much better, right? But I think many lessons, they try to get the details down first. And yeah, I do understand the reason for it. Like, it feels more proper to learn the very fine grammatical details of a language first. It feels like more academic. It feels more proper to do. But I think it's just a very unnatural way to do things. Because if you think about it, nobody learns a language this way. Nobody. If you look at native speakers, like when they learn it from a child, nobody learns the details of the grammar first, right? And even if you have like a adult friend that learned a language when they were an adult or whatever, or like a teen or whatever, they're not like a baby anymore. Have you ever had a friend who learned English or any other language? They just moved to the country. At first they couldn't say anything, and then 6 months later, a year later, they can say basically everything. It might not be perfect, of course it's not perfect, but then they could basically say anything they want. Yeah, I've seen this a bunch of times because I live in Canada, and a lot of my friends are from like Japan and Korea and other countries like that. And after a while, they just kind of pick it up. They just kind of speak and just learn naturally, and they don't really speak perfectly, but at least I can understand. And yeah, I think that's much better than trying to speak it perfectly all the time. But I mean, yeah, I do understand why people want to learn to speak perfectly first. I mean, it feels more secure. It feels like more proper and stuff like this. Like, I do really understand that. But I think a better way is in the beginning, just roughly learn the language, just roughly here and there, and then after you get used to it, maybe if you're like pretty comfortable speaking it, not perfectly, then later you can fine tune the details. Like it's much better to be exposed to the language and just throwing words out there first, and then later fix the small little details. It's much easier to do that because you've already been exposed to the language. You've already seen most of the conjugations. You've already seen most of the words, and like, oh, I've seen that before. And then when you fine tune it later, it becomes much easier, because you already have your feet wet in the language, I guess. So I think that way makes more sense. I'm not saying grammar is not important to learn, but it's much better to learn it after you've been exposed. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say in this video, guys. I hope it helped you. Do you disagree or disagree with me? Leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.